Alrighty, we'll get started. So for the next 2 weeks, because we have this week and then next week, and then we start Mark afterwards, so we kind of have 2 weeks to fill. We'll focus on the suffering servant. There's a lot of good stuff in Isaiah, but Isaiah sometimes gets shortchanged simply because it's so long, right? It's 63 chapters in Isaiah, and so we kind of shortchange Isaiah. So we're gonna kind of focus on 2 weeks with the suffering servant, and we're gonna do this with we're gonna look at videos. It's a 5-part series they put out. The seminary in St. Louis put out. We obviously will only look at 2 of them, not all 5. But they'll kind of guide our discussions as we look at the suffering servant things. What to glean from these things, what to learn from these things. So that'll be the next 2 weeks. It's kind of looking at the suffering servants and what that means for us, and wonderful passages, and just kind of focus on them a little bit more. So we'll begin with Isaiah 40. They're gonna look at the video will look at several different passages, but they're going to focus quite a bit on Isaiah 40 and Isaiah 53. So we're going to read those passages first, so that way they're fresh in our mind. We kind of know where they're going a little bit, and then we'll watch our video and we'll have some time for discussion afterwards. So Isaiah 40, and we'll do the whole chapter. It's about 30-some verses. I'll read the whole chapter. So the beginning of Isaiah 40 is, we know the beginning of Isaiah 40. You'll hear it, and you'll all know these words. These are very much Advent and Lenten things we hear between Isaiah 40 and 53. So, comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and cry to her that her warfare is ended, that her iniquity is pardoned, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. A voice cries, in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be lifted up, and every mountain and hill be made low. The uneven ground shall become level, and the rough places a plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. A voice says, cry. And I said, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades. When the breath of the Lord blows on it, surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever. Get you up to our high mountain, O Zion, herald of good news. Lift up your voice with strength, O Jerusalem, herald of good news. Lift it up, fear not. Say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold, the Lord God comes with might, and his arm rules for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his recompense before him. He will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom, and gently lead those that are with young. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and marked off the heavens with a span, enclosed the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Who has measured the spirits of the Lord? Or what man shows him his counsel? Whom did he consult? And who made him understand? Who taught him the paths of justice, and taught him knowledge, and showed him the way of understanding? Behold, the nations are like a drop from a bucket, and are counted as the dust of the scales. Behold, he takes up the coastlands like fine dust. Lebanon would not suffice for fuel, nor are its beasts enough for a burnt offering. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are accounted by him as less than nothing and emptiness. To whom then will liken God? Or what likeness compare with him? An idol? A craftsman cast it, and a goldsmith overlays it with gold and casts for it silver chains. He who is too impoverished for an offering chooses wood that will not rot. He seeks out a skillful craftsman to set up an idol that will not move. Do you not know? Do you not hear? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out like the heavens like a curtain, and spreads them like a tent to dwell in, who brings princes to nothing, and makes the rulers of the earth as emptiness. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth. When he blows on them, and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble. To whom then will you compare me, that I should be like them, like him, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see who created these. He who brings out the host by number, calling them all by name, by the greatness of his might, and because he is strong in power, not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God? Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint to grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might he increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So I'll give you a few minutes. I have it on your sheets. Just a place to kind of, just thoughts. We probably don't do this enough. Of reading scripture and just pondering it, thinking about it, stuff the thought, just that pops in your mind. So I'll give you a little bit just to kind of write down your thoughts. Alrighty, we'll move on. I know some of you are still writing, but for the sake of time. Also, I'll point out, I don't know if they were put up Monday or exactly, but the rest of our pictures are hung up. So if you haven't noticed the rest of our pictures, they are now hung up. So you can kind of take a look at them afterwards. Alrighty, Isaiah 53 then. And Isaiah 53 is really, that's the suffering servant right there. And once again, these are passages that, this chapter. This is very much a Lenten thing. You hear it every year. These are words you know. But we'll read them again. I'll do the whole chapter. It's only 12 verses, so much shorter. And this is kind of the suffering servant here. So Isaiah 53. Who has believed what he has heard from us? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people? And they made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich man in his death, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the many, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul to death, and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. So I give you another place to kind of just collect your thoughts, think about this, ponder it for a little bit, and write some stuff down. Alrighty, so we'll watch our video, like I said. There's a lot of good stuff in here. They obviously have 5 parts. We'll only look at it if it's 2 of the parts. We'll jump in the middle. We're in session 3. They'll do a little bit of a recap. So our video, I also have a section there to take notes. If you want to take notes, if you just want to watch, it's fine. Because after our video, I'll have you guys discuss at your tables, just things you heard, things that stood out, because there should be quite a few. There's a lot of good stuff in here. So the 2 people who are talking, who are kind of leading us, I'll turn off the lights, but on the left is Dr. Gibbs. Thank you, Tim. So Dr. Gibbs, he wrote the commentary. He always jokes the way too long commentary in Matthew. His commentary comes in 3 parts. One of the best commentaries ever. Fantastic scholar, probably even better man. The guy is just wonderful. And so he retired when I was in seminary, so he's retired now. And then the guy on the right, some of you may know him or have met him. That's Dr. Lessing. He's preached here quite a few times. And he's now over at Concordia St. Paul's. He teaches old history. He's an old history guy. But he was at seminary for a while. So that's who that is. Like I said, he's preached here a few times. So we'll watch this and kind of talk about it afterwards.
Welcome to another session of an In the Word Bible study from Concordia Seminary. My name is Jeff Gibbs, and I'm the host and co-teacher along with Dr. Reed Lessing. This is the study of Isaiah 52 and 53 that we're calling Isaiah's Ancient Song for Today, The Servant Suffers for Straying Sheep. And this is our third session of the study, and we're calling it We Confess Our Sins. So, Reed, welcome back to another good session together.
Good to be here, Jeff.
I wonder, this is our third session now out of 5. I wonder if you might maybe just reach back and summarize a little bit sessions 1 and 2 and kind of bring us forward and ready to get started for the next part of the study.
Great question. Maybe one way to look at this is to call our audience to recall a liturgical phrase that they might sing quite often in church. That goes something like this: join in the hymn of all creation, for the Lamb who was slain has begun his reign.
Hallelujah.
Yes, we can actually say that. And those three statements, as we will pick them out, are a nice summary of Isaiah 40:55, and they also serve to really highlight and feature the four servant song. So beginning in chapter 42, there is a creational celebration. That would be in verses 10 through 12. By creational celebration, I mean the mountains, the hills, the rivers, the islands, the deserts are celebrating God's great salvation for his people Israel. We have another creational hymn in chapter 49, and then another one earlier, I just recalled, in chapter 44.
Okay.
Verse 21 and 22, and then, like I said, in 49. And then we have one right at the end of the unit in chapter 55, 12, and 13. So there are these four creational segments where inanimate objects are praising God.
Right. So
we are invited to join in the hymn of all creation, since there are four of these, in 42, 44, 49, and 55. For the Lamb who was slain brings us right to the fourth servant song. In chapter 53, we are told in verse 6 that, we all like sheep have gone astray. And then in verse 7 of chapter 53, he is led like a lamb to the slaughter.
Okay.
So the reason why we are joining in the hymn of all creation, because this lamb, this substitute suffering servant, has been slain, and he's begun his reign.
Right.
As we said last time, really one of the pinnacle texts in this section of Isaiah is in chapter 52, verse 7, where there is a gospeler with good news, proclaiming shalom, peace, making known salvation, saying to Zion, your God is king.
Right.
And why is he king? Because of his suffering and death on behalf of all people that we are investigating in the four servant song.
Okay. So that brings us up to the next kind of fairly large section that we want to cover in this session. So maybe I'll just read that, Isaiah 53, and I think we want to go through the first part of verse 11. Okay, and I'll read that, and our viewers can follow along. Who has believed what they heard from us, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, and as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. And they made his grave with the wicked and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth. Yet, verse 10, it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for sin, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. Out of the anguish of his soul, he shall see and be satisfied. Well, I noticed as I was reading what you had said our last session, I think there's so much repetition and so many things that keep coming up in this reading. I was struck actually by the first verse in chapter 53, verse 1 read, to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? I mean, what's going on with that? Talk about that, what that is trying to communicate.
Right, many of our listeners might recall the arm of the Lord as being an Exodus motif.
Okay.
Actually going back the first time in Exodus 6, verse 6, where God promises to rescue his people with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm.
Okay, got
That's
it.
right,
Right,
that's
I
right. If you feel like you're too far away from Yahweh, he can stretch out further and grab you.
That's good.
It's a beautiful metaphor. So this whole idea of the arm is actually a kind of a subtext of Isaiah 40 to 55, as are any number of other Exodus ideas and motifs, of which we don't have time to get into. But that is certainly a primary one. And it first appears in a very important text in chapter 40, verses 10 and 11. Chapter 40, verses 10 and 11. And as I mentioned in an earlier segment of our study, chapter 40 is really the overview of the plan of redemption for people in Babylon. 1 to 11 is really the core of the program of salvation. And 12 through 31 is actually why God can do this, because he's the creator of the ends of the earth, etc. So in chapter 40, verse 9, we have Zion and Jerusalem being an evangelist. By the way, this is the first time in the Bible gospel is used in a theological sense.
Oh, okay.
And what is the gospel? Behold your God.
Right.
All right? At the end of verse 9. Well, who is this God that the people are invited to behold, to look at, put their trust in? We have the arm motif in verse 10, whereby Yahweh is coming with a strong arm. His arm is ruling for him. And then in verse 11, his arm is more tender and compassionate, as it is an arm of a shepherd who's gathering the little ewes and placing them in his bosom. So this is a marvelous picture of the gospel. This is your God. He has a strong arm and a saving arm. Right. What we often sing in the hymn, Holy, 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 he's merciful and mighty.
Okay.
Mighty going with verse 10 and merciful in verse 11 with the shepherding motif. He's tough, he's tender. Right. He's sovereign, he's saving. Okay. So we need both, actually. If God was only all-powerful, we wouldn't know how he felt toward us. Right. And if he felt toward us with great love but didn't have power to carry out his plan of salvation, that wouldn't help us either. Okay. So climactically, in Jesus, we see true God, true man. Right. So this idea of the strong arm in these chapters of Isaiah is going to appear several times. We will look specifically at chapter 52, which introduces us into the four servant song. And we're looking at 52 verse 10, where we have this strong arm, where it says, the arm of Yahweh, the Lord, will be revealed, and this is his holy arm before the eyes of all the nations. So this is a tough arm, right?
Right.
Bulging biceps.
Right.
Kind of muscle shirt.
Right.
Kind of idea, okay? But then what happens in 53 verse 1, which is kind of the jumping off point for this discussion on the arm of the Lord, is the shock and the question of 53:1 is, who would have thought this arm would be revealed in this way?
I was just going to ask that question, actually. Yeah, I mean, because this is anything but strength.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We get a little hint, see, in 40 verse 11, where we have the shepherding arm.
Right.
But like biblical authors like to do so often, including Isaiah, is they kind of give you a little hint of things, and then they're going to show you much more later on.
Interesting.
So here is the compassionate arm of God being revealed in the least likely person, in the least likely place.
I just thought of one of the collects for the Pentecost season. Something like, "O God, whose almighty power is made known chiefly in showing mercy and pity." See, power, we
Right,
don't think of
right.
it normally in those terms. so.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, and then we have, I can't help but think of 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9.
Okay.
My power is made most perfect in
Weakness, right, right.
So this is the whole upending
My ways are not
human
your
wisdom and
ways.
knowledge.
Right,
Right,
okay,
right.
right.
Mhm,
Yeah, good. I noticed another thing as I was reading through the verses, and that's all the we and the us's in there. I mean, what's going on? It seemed almost new. I didn't see that in the first part of the song, but now in these verses, it's all about what we have seen, what he has done for us, and so forth. Talk about that.
Right, and thanks for accenting that in your reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. What we have to do to understand that is to go to verse 10 in chapter 53, where the servant becomes a guilt offering. And the Hebrew there sounds something like a sham. He's an asham. If we go back to the book of Leviticus, we'll see that this asham or guilt offering comes in two different categories. The first category is an asham, a guilt offering, is offered if I have sinned unintentionally.
Okay.
And that would be a sin of omission.
Right.
In that case, I need a bull or a goat or a lamb, and I need that sacrificed, and then I would be cleansed and forgiven of that unintentional sin.
Okay.
Now, if I sin intentionally with malice aforethought,
Right.
then I need to make a confession of my sins
Okay.
in order for this asham, this guilt offering, to be efficacious or to work or to cover and atone for my sin. So what's happening beginning in 53:1 through the first part of 53:11 is this is actually a confession and absolution of sin.
So that's where the we and the us.
Exactly.
We didn't do this. We did this. It was our iniquities. It was our punishment. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
interesting.
So little do we know that we're reading this, and all of a sudden we're brought into the drama and the narrative.
Right.
And the question might be, wait a minute, I'm not exiled in Babylon.
Okay.
This can't refer to me.
Right.
And initially the answer is right.
Yeah.
But if we would press that and say, well, I'm not exiled, then the answer is
There's different kinds of exile.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And the first exile, the first leaving home was in Genesis 3.
Yep.
Where our forefather and foremother Adam and Eve were exiled outside the promised land, so to speak, the Garden of Eden. And they were in the land of Nod, apparently. At least that's where Cain is in chapter 4 of Genesis, which means wandering.
Okay.
So everyone, every human being is east of Eden.
Yeah.
Everyone's far away from home.
Right.
Everyone needs the atonement that this servant offers.
I just thought of Ephesians 2. You who were far off, talking about Gentiles now, have been brought near by the blood of the suffering servant.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
That's neat.
And in that same chapter in Ephesians, Paul talks about how Christ has become our peace.
Yes, indeed.
Which certainly
Exactly.
resonates with verse 5.
Yeah, in fact, I
of
want to get to
53.
that. I've got
Yes,
a note
yes,
here, and
yes.
I want to get there too. Well, okay, there's kind of a contrast then between what the servant is doing and our need. I mean, he's doing all, we're not doing any of it. He's doing all of it.
Right.
So what about the image, again, it's a little bit early on in the verses, of a young plant and a root out of dry ground? I mean, I thought of Isaiah 11. Is there a connection there?
Yes, yes. And,
Yeah.
and let me just go back to one earlier comment you
Okay,
made.
okay, go ahead.
The servant's doing everything.
Yeah.
Actually, he's not.
Okay.
In terms of this song.
Okay.
There are about 25 passive verbs. He's allowing this to
It's
happen
being done
to
to
him.
him. Got
So
it.
we would, using doctrinal categories,
Yeah.
we might say passive obedience.
Okay,
In this
okay.
case.
Right.
All right. All right.
Right. Grammatically founded.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
very nice.
Yes,
Very
yes.
nice.
But this whole idea of being a root out of dry ground.
Yeah.
You're exactly right on
Okay.
chapter 11,
Okay.
verse 1, where the Davidic Messiah
Right.
is like a shoot from Jesse's stump.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that Isaiah has a love for big trees as well.
Okay, yeah.
So he knows about the cedars of Lebanon and the
Right.
oaks of Bashan
Right,
in
right.
chapter 2, verse 13. In contrast to the beauty, the might, the power of these huge trees in Isaiah's day, he compares the Messiah in chapter 11 and then here in chapter 53 too, with a root, with just a little tentacle coming up, which is not what we would expect to be the place of salvation.
Right.
We have the weak, tender, compassion arm showing up again in verse 2.
You know, sometimes I think that the most important Bible verse of all is, "My ways are not your ways," which I think is in Isaiah 55. Is
That's
that right?
right, 7
Yeah.
and 8, and we'll get to that.
Okay,
I know
we
that's,
will.
that's
Okay,
one of
good.
our
Good,
questions
good.
here.
All right,
But let me just kind
yeah.
of preface that.
Yeah, good.
With what I like to call the key text in chapters 40, 55, and that would be in chapter 45, verse 15.
Okay.
Where we have another surely, as we kind of hear Handel's Messiah resonating
Right.
in the back of our mind. Surely you are the God who hides himself. And so God works in hidden, mysterious, unthought of ways.
Completely unexpected.
Through Cyrus,
Right.
who would have thought a Persian king would be called a Messiah and a shepherd,
Right.
and through the substitute servant. And yet in his very hiddenness, the verse goes on to say, the God of Israel is a savior.
Right.
So this really gets us at the heart of God's hiddenness as his way to save people.
His unexpected way.
Exactly.
Isn't this great? I mean, when we talk about Christ fulfilling the Old Testament, we don't just mean here's a promise that comes true, here's a promise that comes true, but these great themes that the prophets reveal to Israel. And again, they can't figure it all out, but then when Christ has come and finished, well, the part of his work that he's finished, if I can say it that way, then it becomes evident that, oh, God was like this all along.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. Really
Very good point.
Okay.
Very good point.
Okay, well, we have just a few more minutes on this section of the study. You want to say something about peace, about shalom and wholeness and so forth?
Right. Yes. Yes.
And what the servant does to restore that?
Yes.
I see it in verse 5 at least.
That's right. That's right. The punishment that brought us peace.
Yes.
And as we've said several times now, behind that English word peace is the Hebrew word shalom.
Right.
And it's really a contested idea in Isaiah 40 to 55.
Oh, okay.
As we said in an earlier segment, the Babylonian Akitu festival, New
Right.
Year's festival, where they reenacted their creation epic, the Enuma Elish, guaranteed shalom.
Right.
See, prosperity, wholeness, healing, abundance, wealth. See, But what Isaiah says, and I'll just give our audience some verses here. In 40 verse 17, Isaiah calls all the nations, and here's the Hebrew word, tohu, which would translate as formless, which comes in the second verse of the Bible in Genesis 1 verse 2. So the nations are tohu. That would be the antonym or the opposite of shalom.
Okay.
Tohu is formlessness, chaos, just everything entailed with those words.
So peace isn't the absence of war. It's much bigger. It's to be ordered and to fit together
Exactly.
and all those
right.
kinds of things.
Everything kind of lines up with everything.
Yeah, okay.
But the nations are agents of chaos.
Okay.
All right? In 40 verse 23, the leaders of the nations are tohu, or agents of chaos. Then in chapter 41, verse 29, the gods of the nations are called tohu.
Interesting.
All right?
Interesting.
So Babylon offers shalom, right? But Isaiah says, no, you get just the opposite of shalom.
Okay.
You get formlessness, chaos, a life with no meaning or purpose. So in 48:20, if you stay in Babylon, there's no peace for you. There's no
Okay.
peace for the wicked,
Which is why you have to get out of Babylon.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And the shalom then comes through
Okay.
the suffering of this servant.
Right. Again, just the opposite of what we would have thought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Which really takes us to the last point we want to make in this segment.
Yeah, go ahead.
In 55, 7 and 8, where we have the admonition for the wicked one to abandon his way and the evil man his thoughts. And then in verse 8 of chapter 55, God says, my ways are not your ways.
Right.
Which really is the summation of a lot of what we've been talking about.
Right. Right. It seems like foolishness and weakness, but to those who are being saved, it's wisdom and power. And all wrapped up in a suffering servant.
Right.
All right. Well, good. That's a good place to end this session, I think. And again, to our viewers and listeners, this has been our third session of the In the Word Bible study, Isaiah's ancient song for today, The Servant Suffers for Straying Sheep. And thanks for joining us.
Alrighty. I started moving sound buttons up, trying to get the right one for the video. So I'll go work on that. But take some time, discuss at your tables things that have stood out to you, and learned or anything else. Take a few minutes, kind of talk about that. Alrighty. What did you guys talk about? What kind of stood out to you guys? Good. At the very beginning, you get creation itself celebrating. You get this other places. Paul talks about creation itself moans out, ready for creation itself is ready for Christ to come back. Creation itself kind of moans out as in childbirth, waiting for Christ to come back. And here then in Isaiah, we get creation itself worshiping, right? And so we forget this a little bit of creation itself was also made to worship God. Creation itself is affected by sin, right? We see this all the time. Hurricanes, these kinds of things, natural disasters. But being made perfect is all of creation, not just us, but creation itself, and creation is made to worship. If you ever read The Great Divorce, anybody have ever read The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis? And so it's this guy, the idea behind it is kind of this bus from hell goes up to heaven. They kind of experience heaven. But what you end up getting in heaven is kind of like this creation itself worshiping God. The water, by simply being water, it brings out this melody that worships God. And this is what C.S. Lewis is getting at, is the creation itself of worshiping God, which is kind of cool, right? We don't often think about it this way, but creation does. It does these things. Good. What else? Good. So you get how God is described, right? He's all powerful. He's mighty, bustling biceps, right? But he has the power then to forgive, right? As Lessing pointed out, if he's all powerful, but he doesn't care, he doesn't forgive, well, that doesn't do much for us, right? But if he loves us and he's forgiving and caring, that doesn't do much if he's not all powerful, right? We need both. To be God, to be all powerful and forgiving, to be caring, to be the good shepherd. But to also have on the other side, they can do all things, right? We need God to be both, right? God is all of these things. He's both, right? He's described it this way, as caring and tender, and yet, he is all powerful, right? We shouldn't cross God, but he still has this other side to him, right? This wonderful image of how God is described in these places, in Isaiah, of all of these things. Nice. What else? Yeah, chapter 53 is confession and absolution. Yeah, right? Like I said, we hear chapter 53 during Lent all the time, right? 53 is probably not something new for us, but it's confession and absolution. It's what we have done and yet what God has done for us, right? Chapter 53, when Isaiah is originally proclaiming this, right, they're looking forward to the one who is to come, right? We, on the other hand, look back. It's our confession. What has he done for us because of us, right? Because of our sin, our transgressions. And yet God has done this for us, right? It's confession and absolution here. Anything else? Alrighty then. I have a few things that I just kind of picked up as I was listening to that's on your handouts. I'm going to jump around because that's what I'm going to do. So number 7, if you jump down to number 7, this idea of passive obedience, right? They talked about this, right? Even in the Hebrew, it's it's passive. The whole thing was passive, right? So he was oppressed. He was afflicted, right? The idea is, what does he do? The suffering servant. What? Nothing, right? The suffering servant actually does nothing, right? He allows these things to happen to himself, right? The servant allows these things, which then, of course, we see, right, during Jesus' trial, right? He allows these things to happen, right? Pilate's like, I have the power to free you, in which Jesus responds, I can be free. I can have an army of angels here at the cry of my command, right? I'm here simply because this is where I need to be, right? The only reason actually, Pilate, you're in power is because the Father has allowed you to be in power. Right? We see Jesus allows these things to happen, right? He allows himself to be nailed to a cross. He allows himself to be beaten, to be mocked, right? This is this passive obedience. He allows these things to happen to him, right? He doesn't have to. It's not because he's too weak or anything like that. But he's passive. He allows these things to happen for us, right? He's oppressed. He's smitten, afflicted for us. He allows these things. Like I said, we see this, right? We probably know this, but it's just really cool how this Isaiah 53 really makes this obvious, that this is a passive thing, that he allows these things to happen. Like I said, Isaiah 53 is just wonderful, especially since it's happened so, is looking forward to what this suffering servant will do, and then we see it played out. And so just this passive obedience of what God does for us, right? And now he sits and rules at the right hand of God. Now he has active obedience, right? But before it's passive. He allows these things to happen. So we see this. Another thing that really kind of was interesting was they talked about the different exiles, right? The different exiles. Have you guys ever thought about the different exiles? Right? It's a new thing, right? I figured it was, right? And we don't often talk about exiles, and we talk about an exile. What exiles do we talk about? Yeah, the Israelites, right? They go into the exile by the Assyrians, by the Babylonians, right? We think of those exiles, but as Dr. Lessing pointed out, there's the exile that we're all a part of, and that's being the exile outside of Eden, right? We're all meant to be in Eden, right? We're not meant to be outside of Eden. And yet we are, right? And there's an exile right there that all of us are, right? So all of us need a Savior. Why? Because all of us are in exile outside of Eden that we don't sometimes think about. Then, of course, you can talk about the exile of just being outside of God's people, right? That's an exile outside the kingdom of God. That kind of goes back to, if you're in early service of our gospel reading, right, of being outside God's kingdom, right? That's an exile. And this is what Dr. Gibbs pointed out in Ephesians 2, right? Those who are far off have been brought in, right? The Gentiles, us, right? We have been brought in, and we were far off, now we've been brought in, right? That's an exile right there. You're outside of God's kingdom, right? So these different kind of exiles, these different ways of thinking of just what's happening in the Bible. What does it mean to be exiled? These kinds of things. I thought that was really interesting that we don't often talk or think about. What are you guys whispering about over there? About nothing? Yeah. Arguing about which one's going to say something out loud? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. It's the one problem of sitting too close to the front. Right? And then we've talked about this then quite a bit of, God's ways are not our ways, right? We see this all over the place, and they made it abundantly clear right in the video of all the different ways God's ways are not our ways, right? And we see this in Isaiah, right? We get the suffering servant, right? No one would expect the Son of God, or the Son of Man, if we're going to be a little bit more biblically accurate, going back to Daniel, the Son of Man to suffer the way he's going to, right? They mock him, right? If he is the Christ, come down, right? If you do these things, come down. We don't expect God to work that way. They describe him then as a stump, right? Kind of going back to Isaiah 11. We don't expect a God to look this way, to act this way. Or if Jason pointed out, right, God is, he shows his power in mercy and pity, right? We don't think of power that way, right? If we have power, we want to do stuff we want to do. We don't think of power of mercy and pity, right? These kinds of things where God works in mysterious ways. I want to look at the 1 Corinthians. They alluded to it. It's a great Bible passage that we know we read last year. But first, why do you think God acts this way? Why does God act in mysterious ways or hidden ways? Good, good. Yeah, so you get all these hints, right? And then they reveal it. So I think one of the reasons is God acts in mysterious and hidden ways. One of the, I think the reasons is it's because of our sinful nature. Right? It's mysterious and hidden for us because of our sin. Right? We think of power, right? As Gibbs pointed out, right? We think of power not in showing mercy and pity. Well, why not? Because of our sinful nature, right? Once we're in power, we can do what we want. Right? That's our sinful nature speaking. Right? So God is hidden. He acts in mysterious ways because our sin so clouds our judgment of what, is what we think is right, that we don't see God. I think that's part of it. Any other thoughts? Good, because he humbled himself, right? I think this, once again, kind of goes back to this idea, right? If somebody's a leader, we don't think they should humble themselves to take on the form of a lonely worker or something else, right? I think part of it is to remind us that we're not in control, right? If we think we have God figured out, right, God is going to act this way, well, guess what? He probably won't then, right? Because God is God and we are not, right? I think sometimes God acts in hidden, mysterious ways to remind us who actually is God, right? God is God. So he's going to act the way he's going to act, right? We can't control him. I think this is part of it as well. So let's turn to 1 Corinthians 1. Once again, I think verses we're well familiar with, but it kind of drives this point home a little bit. So 18 through 25. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? But since in the wisdom of God the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and folly to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. Right? So we get this once again, right? The wisdom of this age is made foolish in God. And I think it gets to this point, right? If we think we know what God is or we can control God, we have to remember, no, God is God. Now, do we understand parts of God? Absolutely, right? God has revealed himself through his Son, right? He is merciful and mighty, right? He is both mighty and merciful, right? He has revealed himself, so we know quite a bit about God. Do we know all things about God? No, right? Somebody explained to me the Trinity perfectly, right? The best you can do is the Athanasian Creed. And then you read the Athanasian Creed and you think to yourself probably, what does that all mean, right? We can't fully understand and know God. Why? Because he's God and we're not, right? But this is this idea, this wisdom, right? It's folly to them. They say this makes no sense. No wisdom can actually perceive this. So you guys are speaking foolish. And that's Paul's point. It's folly to those who believe this. But it's the wisdom of God, right? If it's God's wisdom, well, then it should be our wisdom, right? We shouldn't conform God to our wisdom. Our wisdom should be conformed by God. So this is where we just begin to see God acts in mysterious and hidden ways. And one of them is the suffering servant, right? They pointed out Isaiah 45. How does God save the Israelites in exile from the Babylonians? They said it in the video. I don't know if you caught it. There was a lot in the video. How did God save the Israelites from the Babylonians in exile? Nope. No, they're in exile here, taken captive. There's slaves in Babylon. Yeah, they sent the Persians. Cyrus. He sends Cyrus, the Persian king. How does God save his people from the Gentiles? By using other Gentiles. And not very good ones at that. Morally upright, I should say. Where do we ever expect God to work that way? No, right? We wouldn't. What is God's plan? I'll send other people to conquer the people that have conquered you. Now it does, right? Cyrus sends them back to the promised land, right? The point being is, we wouldn't expect God to work this way, right? This is not how we would think, but this is how God works, right? It makes the wisdom of this world at this age folly, foolish. The last thing, it's 10:29 to end on, this idea of peace, of shalom, that they talked at the very end about, right? That shalom is more than just no warfare. But shalom and peace is actually, a fitting in of things working the way they're supposed to. Righteousness, right? Righteousness is the way things are supposed to be, right? And so shalom is when everything's working the way it's supposed to be. That's when there's peace. Right? A great example, right, is there's so many, right? If parents act like parents and kids act like kids, right, there's peace in the house and everything's good, right? If one of them forsakes the duties, let's say the parents tell the kids to do something, the kids throw, they think this is completely unfair and unjust, and life is awful because of this. Is there peace? No, right? There's no shalom, right? If bosses work well, if bosses are doing what bosses are supposed to do and workers are doing what workers are supposed to do, right? There's peace in the company. Good things happen, right? There's a lot of examples of this, but peace is more than just no warfare. It's things working the way they're supposed to. Everything's fitting together, right? And so that's the peace that God brings, right? He puts us back to where we're supposed to be, in a rightly relationship with Him and a rightly relationship with one another, right? This is this idea of a peace, of completeness, of wholeness, not just within ourselves, but within society, within creation itself, right? Within nature, right? This whole idea of peace that God gives. And it's this completeness of everything working the way it's supposed to. And so they kind of talk about shalom or peace there, because that comes up in verse 5 of Isaiah. So good. We'll continue talking about this next week as well. We'll actually watch the last session. But anything else before we end? Like I said, there's a lot of things here. We can just keep going. But anything before we close? Alrighty, let's close with the Lord's Prayer then. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.